Good morning and welcome back to United TV. We're going to be talking about a few players linked to Manchester United, and a lot of it depends on the relegation situation in the Premier League. Very bad defeat for West Ham yesterday, 3-0 to Brentford. It puts the pressure on them massively. Could Manchester United look to capitalise if West Ham got relegated? There's some good players at West Ham. I did talk about trying to get a player from them in January that they ended up selling him, but Luca Paqueta went for big money. We're looking at Matheus Fernandes, we're looking at Diouf, two players which potentially combined could be costing only about £60 million if Manchester United did try and get these players. I think Fernandes is supposed to have a relegation clause of about 34 million, so he would suddenly become elevated up the list. I think as a good option, very cheap option as well. At the moment, he's probably, if West Ham survive, I think he's probably an unlikely target because he'd cost about 70 million plus. But at the moment, West Ham, I don't know, it's probably asking a lot for Spurs to get too many good results. But if Spurs start picking up points, it could be West Ham getting relegated, despite probably playing the better football of the two teams in the last couple of months. Also, in terms of looking forward to the Manchester United versus Liverpool game, we will be doing a pre-match stream, a watch-along, followed by player ratings, and as always, we will be doing a call-in show probably later on this evening as well for people that want to come on have their say about the match. So quite a few streams planned for this afternoon. But this morning we're going to look at transfer news. Also, there is a couple of injury doubts for the Liverpool game. Luke Shaw is a doubt. I think Benjamin Sesko is a doubt. So it might mean that maybe Dorgu Cunha come back a little bit quicker than we were thinking because maybe we might be limited in attacking options. But I think we'll have to find out. We will be live about an hour before the match to give you kind of any updates we see from this one. But this is going to be a stream where we can discuss three players that are being linked to Manchester United quite a bit over the last couple of weeks. A lot of fans really like Fernandes. I think that's where a lot of that's come from. Diouf is definitely on the radar. Just to go back to something that Laurie Whitwell put out maybe like a couple of days ago, and this is where Fernandes fits into Manchester United's transfer strategy. They've got a backup list if they don't get their main targets. So the main targets have been generally thought to be Belieber, which I think is quite easy, but you've got too many, Elliot Anderson and Tonali. And I think Anderson and Tonali and too many are probably the big money targets they're looking at. But in terms of looking at potential backups, you've got Alex Scott, you've got João Gomez, you've got Matheus Fernandes. And I think Fernandes is probably the one player where if West Ham get relegated, it really hits his price. It effectively makes him about at least £30 million cheaper. So if West Ham do get relegated, I think Paris Saint-Germain are also going to be trying to swoop in there. So it's not going to be easy. I don't think United can just walk in and get Fernandes if they do get relegated. I think there might be a serious battle for him. He's a top quality player. But this is going to be a debate as well as in terms of these players you're looking at, what's the best option as well? Like, do you look at these teams? And if there's other people we haven't mentioned, then feel free to let me know. But I think what we're looking at here is potentially West Ham getting relegated does change the picture a little bit because if United are looking at two big money signings, Matheus Fernandes could suddenly jump up the list as actually being a top quality signing, but probably available at the similar sort of price to Hayden Hackney. So I think there's definitely going to be some interest in him. There's probably zero chance he stays at West Ham if they get relegated. I think the Diouf one is probably interesting as well because Manchester United linked to left backs, and we're looking at a situation where today, if Luke Shaw is not available, then yeah, it's a tricky situation. So I'll jump into the comments and see what people are thinking initially, get initial reaction. Welcome, Rob, Kazi, Tony. Mr. Deadpool says Tonali is a must. The price at 80 million, as much as it is, it's 30 million pounds cheaper than Declan Rice was. It's probably about 30 to maybe 40 million pounds cheaper than actually probably like 35 million pounds cheaper than Caicedo. But I think Tonali could be at a price where it's actually not too bad. Saying Diouf not great yesterday, says Jim. It was a bit of a bad day for West Ham, wasn't it? But based on one match, he would be not particularly expensive. But if you're looking at Diouf, just to give you a bit of a little bit of information on where the story came from him, that Manchester United, this is a story from a couple of different journalists in the UK saying that they're interested in Diouf. Diouf's only 21 as well, so you see this as being a signing for the future. So for me, this feels a little bit like Luke Shaw stays at the club a little bit longer. Diouf would come in to try and gradually take that place. But a 21-year-old is going to be having ups and downs. I mean, West Ham have had a struggling season anyway, so I think he's identified as one for the future rather than and made like so he's going to be decent now. He's had a good season for West Ham, but I think he's also you're buying a bit on potential, aren't you? You're not going to be buying the finished article at 21.
He's
But
also
they are looking at him as, in terms of how much would he cost? If you're looking at a relegated team, it could be quite cheap, so it could be like quite a good deal. But when you say you take any of those three, Tony, were you referring to the Alex Scott, like the graphic I put on screen, or the three people in the poll? So I would say at the moment Fernandez is probably dominating the poll, and I'm not so surprised by that. But I'm interested to know like what people's reasonings. I think Van der Ven, the story about him, to put that out there as well as part of the conversation. Van der Ven is rumored to want a lot of money, like a big salary demand, apparently. But also, I think we would see a situation where Spurs want a very high transfer fee for Van der Ven. So I think that in terms of total deal, it seems a little bit like okay, I think they're good options. It seems a little bit like Van der Ven for me. I think he's too expensive, and I don't think that if Van der Ven was the best defender in the world, I think we could have a conversation. But I don't think he's as good as I don't think he's as good as Spurs valuation. I think Murillo's a better football player and would still be expensive. But I think that the figures I've seen regarding Van der Ven, I think he should stay at Spurs at that price. Like if somebody pays over 80 million, or I would say over 60 million for Van der Ven, I think it's too much. That 200k a week is probably in line with like how much money we get market value for players like Lindelof. We're paying about I think over like 160, 170. So overall, I think the package seems pretty awful. I don't think Van der Ven is as good as Spurs think he is. I know people like him. He's quite pacey. I'm not going to say he's awful, but I think that for the price, you'd want the best midfield. You'd want the best defender in world football for that sort of money. So I don't think he's close to that. I think it's a, a not good deal. Put it that way. What's wrong with Harry and Mass? Says Tony. I don't know. I don't know whether with Harry and Mass it's that they feel he's not ready. When you see some players that he did go to Sheffield Wednesday. I think he won the Player of the Month award a couple of times. So he did well at Sheffield Wednesday. I don't know whether Man United just think that when we saw him in the Premier League, I think we saw him we actually saw him against West Ham, didn't we? Suchek kind of muscled him off the ball to score. I think maybe with a Mass. Like he probably needs a bit longer, but I'm wondering whether Man United don't think he's going to reach the level that they want. So I get the feeling with Harry Mass, either he goes out on another loan or he comes back as a backup, but potentially I think he might be sold. So I don't know. All I've seen so far is that he seems to be going down the route of being loaned. And why would buy another injury-prone defender? Says Andy. So can you imagine like Manchester United buying Van der Ven for 100 million? Like that's kind of the price tag they put on him. And I think like this in injury issues, people talk about this a lot. Man United have to be serious. You got Delit just coming back from. Apparently Delit's fully recovered from his injury, but I don't know if we're going to see him in any match day squads anytime soon. I don't know how quick it's going to be before he gets back on the pitch. But I think Harry Maguire will always miss a few games just based on his age, but not loads of games. But I think if you're looking at Van der Ven, who does have this injury issue already, I don't know. I think I would be dodging him for. I would be avoiding Van der Ven because I think he makes mistakes, and I've watched him defensively, and I think he's good going forward. People love the pace, but he just makes silly mistakes, and I don't think. I think Van der Ven would be scrutinised at Manchester United, and we would be considered a big waste of money if we did sign him. That's where I would go with that one. But in terms of like the graphic on screen, that you're looking at three good players, decent options. It says you watched Fernandez and Tonali last night. So it seems we've been screwed with these prices sometimes. It does seem to be that for whatever reason, like, I think it's just the current football situation, Dehexion. I think that currently players are just going for so much money, it's getting a bit ridiculous. So when you're looking at, so the way I look at transfers at the moment is I'm looking at transfers and kind of just comparing the go right. How much is Gomez supposed to be? About 35. Alex Scott, 50-ish, 55. Fernandez might be 70, might be 35 if they get relegated. You kind of just put them in line and go right. If you want Tonali, he's going to cost a bit more. If you want Anderson, he might cost a little bit more again. Tchouameni's probably about 70 million and would represent maybe one of the better values for money. But it's quite tricky, isn't it? I think if you look at the individual price, they all seem a lot. So they all seem quite a lot. Um, so why would we sign players from Spurs? I mean, I'm not advocating signing players from Spurs. I would also be looking at that and saying that I've watched Spurs a few times, and to be honest, I don't see any players actually like. Sometimes they look okay. Like, I think Xavi Simons looked okay, but you're looking at how much contribution does he make? He's out with a serious injury. I think defensively, like, okay, Van der Ben's not 100% responsible because you've got Romero there, you've got other players as well. The goalkeeper's pretty poor, but overall, you look at it and think there's just not a lot of quality out there, is there? In that football team. I look at West Ham as like a much more difficult team to play, but West Ham may have left themselves a little bit too much to do. I still think West Ham have got a good chance of staying up, but it's going to be very difficult. I can't remember who Spurs are playing today, but I think West Ham have just got some difficult fixtures coming up, so they might be unlucky. But I feel like if West Ham could have sorted out things a bit early on in the season, they shouldn't really be in this mix, should they? But don't forget, West Ham were dreadful for about 20 games, so this is the problem they had. Morning, my man, Mr. Helgi says, "Good morning. I would love Diouf. He's so active, so good at crossing." And I think this is what Manchester United are looking at. If you ever followed Michael Carrick's Middlesbrough, then he does like to have one fullback that's quite aggressive, goes forward. And at the moment, you probably feel like with Dallo does go forward, but he's not always the best at crossing. And I think Luke Shaw doesn't have the ability to go forward as much as he used to. I think Diouf would represent somebody that does put in great crosses. It is something Manchester United are looking at, a more attacking fullback. And you could say that maybe Dorgu could be that player, but I think Dorgu is going to be much more effective further up the pitch. Got a great finish. So I think Dorgu, his development is going to be more of a left winger, and I think that that's a priority for him as well as a player. And I think he does a great job there. So if you're looking at this, if you take away say 34 million from 60, you're looking at maybe like 25 million for Diouf. That represents decent value as well. I think the other options on the table that I can think of off the top of my head were I think there was definitely Kadioglu interest as well, and I do like Kadioglu. He would be slightly more expensive, about 40. But I think we're looking at some good options on the table here. I think with a lot of these, like if you forget the league position, there's actually some top quality in the relegation fighting teams, which is something I think we see this every year. If you think every year, like there's always going to be teams that get relegated. They've got some good players there, and it's the same, probably the same argument as you look at Middlesbrough and teams near the top of the Championship. Quite often have some decent players, and we've seen a few players go through that in the past. Um, Dan says you like Gomez, Baliba, Fernandez, Diouf as your top targets. And so if you're looking at that, like Gomez and Diouf, like Fernandez, potentially if West Ham get relegated, that's not that expensive either. So Baliba's probably the one that has a bit of an unknown price. We're kind of assuming about 60 to 70, but it's generally quite difficult. Saying Jamie Jackson is usually pretty reliable. Yeah, no, I think it would be that for me, that would be quite a cheap signing. If we're looking at trying to get left backs in, when we're linked to players that are quite expensive, I think you have to be mindful that there's one thing about getting numbers of players in, but you have to be mindful a little bit of cost. So if you're looking at to go back to where I started the stream, if you're looking at a relegation for West Ham, you're pretty much looking at these two players costing about 60 million. If they avoid relegation, I think the price for Fernandez could be 70 plus. We could be looking like 70 to 80 million pounds. That's West Ham's valuation. I think West Ham paid about 45 for Fernandez a year ago. So this is like a reason why they spent a lot of money already on Fernandez. They're not going to be selling him cheap. They would be making a bit of a loss if they get relegated. So it would be quite costly for West Ham. I literally have no idea how much Diouf would be put on there if they stayed up, but I'd imagine given like if it's 25 million for a relegated team, I'm guessing that you're probably looking at Kadioglu prices at least. So you're probably adding like another 15 million on top of his price if they stay up. So I mean, I've said this that as a football fan, I would rather see West Ham stay up because I like the way they play football in comparison to Spurs. I think Spurs are a poor team, but if you're looking at for Manchester United's benefit, a West Ham relegation actually does suit us quite well. So to put this story out there as well, that Manchester United have had talks over Fernandes in the last month, and after there's been some pretty positive feedback from scouting. Also, if you remember, there was a story about maybe a month ago, 6 weeks ago, there was a story about Bruno Fernandes. I think Matheus Fernandes getting called up to international duty. Bruno Fernandes was very positive about him as well. So there's been like already Quite a lot of this is a kind of a recent thing, I think, with Fernandez. A lot of people noticing that he's a top quality player, and this is why he's been in the spotlight a little bit. So, more. But also, I think he's talked about because of the relegation situation, West Ham, because suddenly, if you look at a player that's going to cost 70 million, suddenly it's a very different situation, isn't it? So I'll go through the comments as well. So Spurs play Villa today. That's a tough game, actually. I mean, Aston Villa have been a bit inconsistent, but that's not a that's not a straightforward game for either team, to be honest. I'd say Premier League players always have a higher price unless there's a release clause. That is true. That's true. I would say that Premier League teams have the most money. If you look at like Fernandez, my example with Fernandez was he cost a lot of money to West Ham as well. So these players that we're now seeing either come through the academy or get bought in, the Premier League teams have a lot of money, so they're not going to sell players for cheap. I think that the days of like kind of getting players quite cheap in the Premier League are long gone, and now you have to spend a lot of money. So there's no doubt it's going to cost quite a lot. When was the last time a Premier League team sold two players to another Premier League team? Um, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, we bought two players from Bayern Munich, so we have bought two players at once before. Um, I don't know if anyone can think. I think usually I'm just trying to think of like teams where we bought multiple players from. I can't think off the top of my head. I think generally we don't buy two players from one team. I think Bayern Munich was like somewhat of a first. This is kind of more popular in American sports where you have big trades, but we'll see. Tyrone says Juve isn't very good, can't defend. You say so maybe like based on like no, he's good at crossing. You thinking maybe he's more of a wing back, possibly, but I think you can if you're looking at developing, you're going to be able to develop as a football player. And I guess with this one is that they're hoping that he develops the defensive side of his game. I would say that's kind of the argument I make for Van der Ven. I think Van der Ven's actually quite good going forward, but disappointing otherwise. But she does. So Sebastian said I can vouch for Diouf. Do you think it's a price where when you start looking at potentially how much Diouf costs, like does it become quite a good deal? Because if you're going to spend 25 million on Diouf, I suppose the other options I've seen would potentially be Kadioglu, who's apparently about 40. I think Kadioglu is quite an interesting one, and maybe we're looking at Belieber as well. I don't see us trying to buy two players from Brighton. That would be pretty problematic. I think that it's difficult enough getting one player. But no, I think that I'm just kind of thinking, is there any situation where we bought two players from one club? I can't think so. I don't think so. Torrens saying United need to look elsewhere. You're thinking regarding like the left back situation. Would you be happy with Kadioglu? I mean, Kadioglu is another player that I think people like because he's quite versatile. Could be left back, could be right back, and also quite good going forward. So I don't know. There's options out there. I think probably the most pressing thing at the moment is going to be if West Ham got relegated. I think there's going to be a transfer battle for Matheus Fernandes. That it seems to be that's the player that I can't think of any other players at the moment on the market that if Spurs get relegated, I think for some reason Spurs players still cost the same amount of money. So if you're looking at Van der Ven getting and in a relegated team, he still wants a massive transfer. I don't know if Spurs get relegated. I'm not sure actually Van der Ven is going to be leaving the club because the valuation Spurs are putting on him, I think, is just unrealistic. I don't see how anyone can match that. Whereas if they paid about 45 million for Fernandez at West Ham, there was a relegation clause where he's available for 34 million. I think Fernandez is going to jump ship. He's going to go somewhere else. And I think there's going to be a queue of teams. I think Manchester United will want to get him. I'd be very surprised if there's not other Premier League teams that think, actually, we should try and get him at that price. Paris Saint-Germain will be looking at him as well. And I think that would be a serious, serious battle. So if Paris Saint-Germain and Man United are in for them, he's gone. He's gone from West Ham. I think West Ham lose a lot of players. I mean, Bowen's under a big contract, but there's a lot of good players in their team, and I think they lose a lot of players. If Spurs get relegated, I don't know. I can see players leaving, but I don't think Man United should be anywhere near the front of the queue. There's just a lot of better players available. Torrance saying Somerville not good enough. Yeah, people can have different views on all of these players, aren't they? So you voted other so João Gomez just to be constant because I don't know if Hammers or Spurs are going down. No, João Gomez is one where I think he should be. there seems to be with João Gomez, he's going to go quite quickly, isn't he? That in terms of players, apparently there's Atletico Madrid interested. There's also apparently Leeds are supposed to be putting a bid in as well for João Gomez. I'd imagine João Gomez is holding on to see if Man United actually want to go for him because he's definitely on the list. And I don't know if Man United have had talks, but yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? James is saying Lewis Hall is a must signing. Yeah, one of the on this channel there's a guest host, Jules, absolutely loves him, and I think Jules might have gone to like the Newcastle game, but no, he likes Lewis Hall as well. How much would Lewis Hall cost? I mean, there's a lot of players linked, but yeah. Um, so Romero will be available. Yeah, I'm sure Romero will be available, but I think the price they'll want for him is that Romero has been. I think Romero and Van der Ven are one of the reasons they're in this issues, aren't they? And why not another left back like we did with Dorgi from abroad? Um, yeah, there could be. I think there's a combination of a few things. Like one is going to be that Manchester United have got left backs. They've got Leon they bought from South America about what a year ago, 18 months ago. They got Harry Mass that was loaned out. At the moment, Luke Shaw's there, yeah, the main left back. But you think like I don't know what's happening with Harry Mass because somebody did ask early on in the stream, but I'm wondering whether if they're linked to left backs, it does suggest that Harry Mass they don't feel like you're not going to sign a left back that's 21 years old if you think Harry Mass is the future. So if we're going to seriously get a left back that is potentially the right age to be in the team for a long time, I think that Harry Mass is probably going to be loaned out again and then possibly sold. So I don't unless they think Harry Mass then come and fight with this new signing for this one. Is no, it seems like with Harry Mass, his future's a bit uncertain. So your concern is that the signings we make our squad is tiny, which means we need. I think you need to have yeah, you do need to have a bit of quantity, but I think you need to have some quality as well. So if we're looking at the players on the screen, I think we've got quality here. And if you're looking at the price of João Gomez and you're looking at the price of potentially a relegated West Ham, you've got a bit of quantity there as well. You could get quantity. If you can get a player like Fernandes for under 35 million, it's probably a bargain, isn't it? If you get João Gomez for about 35 million as well, and I mean Wolves are a difficult team to play against recently, despite being so poor for most of the season. There's good options out there. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head whether Spurs have got anything. I don't think so. I think when you look across the Forest team as well, they've actually got a decent amount of good players, and clearly that results are picked up. So Nottingham Forest did have a better team than maybe results kind of reflected. So I don't think they had much issue either. And they might have to, we might be talking about Nottingham Forest back in the European Cup. So potentially their players don't even leave. I know it's if that happens, then shout out to Stephanie who called it first. But why would we take Romero? I don't think we would, but I think we were linked to him. A journalist talked about him as well. Mark said we're giving Maguire a new contract. We're not signing a centre back until either Martinez or De Ligt gets sold. So according to the centre back situation as well, Manchester United will not entertain any offers for Lissandro Martinez. So there was a story when we were talking about Van der Ven. There was a story. Let me just put this up as well. So if this is true, if Van der Ven wants 200k a week, if Spurs want, I don't know how much money they want, 80 million or whatever they want for Van der Ven. But also, apparently, Van der Ven is seen as a potential replacement for Lissandro Martinez. But the issue is, Lissandro Martinez, Man United say they're not even going to consider selling him. So there was like some links with Martinez. So I don't think we're going to see too much movement with centre backs. If we do, then it's going to be like it could potentially be a very big transfer window. But I don't see there's going to be significant movements for a lot of these players. So I think if we're looking at centre back situation, I would just be genuinely surprised if Manchester United did sign a new centre back. I think there's enough issues to sort out in the team without Man United actually messing about with trying to fix. Or if you're going to go for Van der Ven, who's injury prone, and replace Lissandro Martinez with him, I'm not even sure if it's an upgrade on the pitch. So I think they both actually look quite good on the ball. They have different attributes. I think Martinez has got a good range of passing. Van der Ven is incredibly pacey, but if you're looking at trying to improve Man United, I don't know if either of them are going to be. I wouldn't be spending Van der Ven money on an upgrade for Martinez. I'd be looking at trying to buy either a better quality player or just wait for Aiden Heaven to take his place. So I agree with that. It's not going to be ideal. Lacroix, please, says you're not the first person to say that. You're not the first person. Big up to you, Clive, in the chat. Say starting Dan Burn at left back instead of Hall is criminal. Well, they might be replacing that manager, so he might be he might be on the way out. Matty said, big up to you, Matty. Good to see you, Matty. And you're saying that you think Liverpool are in for Van der Ven, which might well be the case. It might be that he goes to Liverpool. If he goes to Liverpool, I'm happy with that. I think that's a good option. Tony says that you'd sell Martinez. Say love the player, but he's injury prone. Not very. Yeah, I kind of drew this conclusion maybe about a year ago when he had his last serious injury. He missed what from last. If you go back a year, he was injured in January. He came back what right at the end of the year was it or December? So he missed nearly a whole year. And for me, that's like Sandro Martinez has missed more games than he's played. So it's not a good situation for me. And Van der Ven is a huge Liverpool fan. Okay, I think Van der Ven might be one of these players that if we don't sign him, which I don't think we're going to sign him, I think we'll just look back on and thinking that we're glad we didn't sign him again. So there's going to be a few players I think we're linked to. I mean, if we miss out on, it looks like we might be missing out on Wharton. Wharton's going to go to Liverpool. I don't think it's the end of the world. I think Wharton's a good quality player. Obviously, got some great attributes, but I don't think Wharton is going to be a player where we think, if only we'd bought Wharton. I think there's other players out there as well. So there's only one player I think of. If we don't get him, it's a disaster. I would like to get Anderson, and I would like to get too many. But if we don't get those players, I do think there's actually quite a few good options. Cake saying 80 for Tonali, 80 for Anderson. It's like you're reading my mind with like the players you're talking about. And so that's most budget gone already. I think we'll be in for mid tier. I think if you're looking at mid tier pricing, I think you probably you would be looking at some mid tier prices, but you can't spend 80 million pounds on every single player anyway. So if Man United spend 80 on Tonali, 80 on Anderson, that's 160 gone. I think you could be looking at potentially say 160 for those two. Then there's definitely room to get get Fernandez or get Joe Gomez. So you could potentially get you can get three very good midfielders for under 200 million. You just have to be mindful that you can't spend, you can't get to Tonali, Anderson too many. But I don't think anyone thinks we can realistically get those anyway. Most of the players we're looking at, I think that the most expensive is going to be possibly Belieber. And I think if Belieber costs more than 70, it'd be a bit of a surprise. If you're looking at the three people on the list, the most expensive probably is Fernandez if West Ham's valuation is 70. But I think Alex Scott could be available for significantly less than that. Again, I think Bournemouth have put a high price on Scott to start with, but there's no way that Man United are going. We're not going to spend 65 million on Scott when there's other options out there. So I don't mind that. When we say mid tier, I think they're actually very good players, aren't they? So if you look at who would be considered mid tier, there's like 50 million pounds that sort of price. So you go like Alex Scott, or you're potentially looking at Angela Stiller in the Bundesliga. You got Agume, you've got all these other options as well. So there's quite a few options that are going to cost maybe like between 40 million pounds and 50 million pounds or 55 million pounds. And I don't mind most of them that we talked about, to be honest. It feels a bit like there's a lot of options out there. Maybe the question should be now is like, who do you actually think is going to get relegated? So if we're having this conversation about relegated teams, looking at the Premier League table, it was a very bad result for West Ham. So I think people are probably a bit negative on West Ham this morning because of that. But if you look at the fixtures at the moment, so currently Spurs are 2 points below West Ham. They do have a game in hand, and that game in hand is away to Villa today. Then they've got Leeds, they've got Chelsea, who are quite rubbish actually, and Everton. So Leeds, Chelsea, and Everton, and Spurs, and Aston Villa for Spurs. If you look at West Ham's last three games, they've got Arsenal away to Newcastle and at home to Leeds. So I think West Ham have got some very like the game against Arsenal is very tough. The game away to Newcastle is going to be a tough one. Newcastle are good at home. Then they've got Leeds. Leeds will have nothing to play for in the last day of the season, but I think Everton will also have nothing to play for against Spurs. So I don't know if Spurs win today, I think they stay up like that because they would have Leeds, they'd have Chelsea, they'd have Everton. So I think if Spurs win today, they stay up. If no, if Aston Villa beat Spurs badly, then I think it's going to be very, very tricky. It's going to come down to the last day of the season anyway. It's not going to be. I don't think it's going to be resolved really quickly, but I think it does go to show that West Ham played great football, but they just need to start getting results. Yesterday was a bit of a disaster. I'd say Virgil, yeah. I think Van der Ven would be the way. Uh, how many players were linked to says Malps? Most of them, I think. Uh, there is a lot, isn't there? There is a lot. Um, but I think in the past, like we paid 60 for Mason Mount, like Kate said. I think for £60 million now, the transfer players were no, the targets we're looking at are way, way better. Like say 60 million bought Mason Mount, but 60 million could potentially get us two football players from West Ham. So this is kind of where I'm hoping that Man United scouting, we do actually seem to be linked to players that every other club wants at the moment. But that's probably a good thing because when we're linked to players that nobody else wants, people get a bit suspicious. But Kate says Mount cost 60 million, and he was a bad signing, but again, injury issue. Is there any negatives about? I know people said that G kind of like divided opinion a little bit, but do you feel is there any negatives about the players we're looking at the moment, like G Fernandez? I think Fernandez is going to be probably most people's favourite option. Um, would you take Juve as well for 25, or do you think there's a better option out there? That I know Juve kind of divides opinions slightly. People saying he's not, not great at defending, but West Ham are struggling. He's only 21 years old. I would say he's definitely very good in terms of putting crosses in. Do we look at that as going to be potentially enough? I think if you're gonna go and try and go for the same sort of price, I think it's going to be quite difficult to find someone that's going to be more effective. If you're thinking short term, like Dorgu was a good signing from Lecce, but he was being monitored by a few teams, and it has taken him a bit of a time to get up to the speed of the Premier League. So it would be that if we sign a player from a different league, it might take a little bit of time. And Devasa says you would take Juve. According to Alex Crook, we'll get four players. Now, if we only get four players, there's going to be a serious issue at the club because if you look at how many players left the club last summer? It was about 10, and we brought four players in. So Manchester United have pretty much said they're running a threadbare squad because they feel like they don't need to have a big squad for just the Premier League. If they think that they can then run the same squad in the Champions League, that would be ridiculous. Surely they can't be that stupid. They can't be that naive to assume that this is exactly what happened with Newcastle. You need to have at least six or seven players. That you need to replace Casemiro, you need to replace Agate, you need to be replacing Toby Collier, and then you probably look at other players that might leave the club. You definitely need to get replacements for Marcus Rashford, Anthony. We've got one striker at the club. There's a lot of players out on loan, which people forget, but they've effectively left the club because Rashford didn't play for Man United this season, and Nana didn't. And you look at Rasmus Højlund didn't play, so those players are going to be needing to be replaced. I think Xerxes and Agate need to be replaced. If you don't buy seven players, or at least get six or seven players, and look at given I know we can't throw academy players into the mix and pretend that that's enough. That would be really really stupid. Torrance says, Chief, I say with AFCON, AFCON's going to be moved to the summer. So with AFCON, I don't think it's going to be played over winter anymore. So it's not going to be an issue anymore. AFCON will be in the summer and every 4 years. So it's going to be similar to the Euros. It's just going to be every 4 years instead of it's every two at the moment, but it's every 4 years. It's going to be in the summer. So it won't be the same situation. AFCON shouldn't impact Premier League seasons again. They're going to standardise it with other major competitions. So when you have AFCON, Euros, World Cup, it's not going to be an issue. So, and I think it's a bit of a shame that it was an issue for a long time because it does make you think about certain players. Like we did get hammered when we lost Ahmad Jallo and we lost Mbuemo. So, Anana leaving wasn't an issue, but you get my point. I think it does put people off signing players that are going to be at AFCON. So it shouldn't be an issue any for for the future. So let's go. But I do take your point though about defensive attributes, Torrin, which is pretty fine. Um, okay, so a big up to you, Gregory, as well. Just saw you. Hope you're good. Must be like quite late where you are, Gregory. So we will spend 250 million just to maintain a top four spot. Is actually mad thinking about it. If you think about it though, Liverpool spent 500 million to effectively just scrape back into the Champions League, and Arsenal spent a billion locking down second place. Okay, Arsenal might get over the line this season. This is probably about about the closest they're ever going to get. But they spent about a billion to achieve that. Manchester City are throwing money at the club. The thing is, though, if Man United don't spend, like every other club does spend, you're just going to start dropping down the league. And it's going to happen. Like you have to spend 250 million because 250 million is probably like spending 30 million 20 years ago. Like prices have gone crazy, but you have to get involved. You can't have a transfer window in January and buy nobody and expect to be competitive over the long term. Stephanie says it looks like Xerxes is staying. Do you reckon Xerxes is going to stay? I was thinking that with Xerxes that he's almost certainly going to go. I mean, if he stays at Manchester United, I just don't see that Xerxes even playing football. So I don't know, I don't know how, I don't know how Xerxes contributes to the team next season. I don't see him in the first team. I see Lacey and other pacey players actually being bench options. I don't know why Xerxes stays. I think United cash in on Xerxes, and I think Xerxes wants to. I think he was going to go back to Serie A. That's my thoughts. But we'll see. If he goes, then I think we can spend the money and get someone that suits our team better. But if he doesn't go, I'll just be. I don't know. He doesn't really offer much, does he? And Grove's saying basically we need a player at every position. So I did see something this morning, which I don't know if this is good news for Man United fans or not, but I think we've got in Vitek. It's assumed with Vitek that he's actually going to be coming. Either going to be loaned out or sold. I don't think Vitek's going to be back at Manchester United as a backup goalkeeper. It appears that Vitek is going to be wanting a place in the first team, and I don't think he's going to be sat on the bench. I think Vitek is going to be possibly loaned out to a Premier League team, or possibly sold to a Premier League team. Like he wants to be a first team player. I don't think we can put Vitek as a backup option. So it might be that Man United actually has to get another backup goalkeeper because Bayern will be sold. I think that's almost done deal, and Onana will be gone as well. So we have to look at that and say, backup goalkeeper. Backup goalkeeper is something that was a bit off the menu for me, but it does seem to be that Vitek's got ambition. He wants to be a first team player, and you can't really argue with that. If he wants to play first team football, he's got a taste of that at Bristol City. He was one of the best players in the Championship. I think he's good, but it's difficult, isn't it? If you've got a backup goalkeeper, they have to accept that they're not going to play much football. They're going to be a backup, and I don't think Vitek wants that. I think he wants to be an international goalkeeper. He's obviously got, I think he's got a high ceiling as well. He was one of the best players in the championship, so I think effectively he feels he's too good to be a backup, and Man United might have to look at trying to then try and sell him. I guess that if he doesn't want to be a backup goalkeeper, there's limited what you can do. The only thing I can think of is that potentially gets loaned to a Premier League team, but I don't know. It's a bit of a shame because I think there's going to be actually enough football to for him to play. Like he could play, he could still get Champions League games. I mean, we don't necessarily going to start Lamans every single match. Yeah, no, I agree. The Hexian. If United don't have a if not United don't spend quite big this summer and they don't invest properly in the squad, then there's not really any excuses, is there? If Manchester United struggle, I think if you're looking at giving Carrick another year, or you're looking at giving Areola a chance or Nagelsmann, if Man United don't fix the fundamental flaws in their squad, it's going to be absolutely ridiculous. And Jim says, loan Vitek. If we sell him, we will regret it. I think it's good to have options for United, but you have to also appreciate, I think, that if Vitek doesn't want to be a backup goalkeeper, then then I don't know. It's like we used to have Romero as a backup goalkeeper, and he was a top quality goalkeeper playing all the cup games. So I don't know if Manchester United can convince him to stay. Tony says some clubs used to have a Premier League goalkeeper and a different cup keeper. Yeah, it's something we used to do, didn't we? We used to. I think we gave Romero like every. Did Romero play like all the games in Europa League or one of the cups, and then we ditched him in the final? I think we like might have treated Romero quite badly, from what I can remember. There was a few things we did, but if you want to be backup, you don't want to be backup, and it's quite a difficult situation because it's not like it's not like another position on the pitch where if Manchester United say we buy a few midfielders, they could be in somewhat in competition, couldn't they, about how they perform. With goalkeepers, you don't really have that sort of competition. You kind of need them to work together and train together and be part of a team. And there needs to be acceptance that one's going to be first choice, one's going to be second choice. And if you have a situation where Vitek wants to be first choice, then I don't think it's going to work out. Then it's not going to be great for Lamans either to have someone that's like pretty much behind him, trying to trying to get his place. And Tony's saying, why not stay and fight? I don't know. I think it's like people that are goalkeepers. They say that the dynamic between goalkeepers at clubs is a bit different to other players. So the idea is that you're part of a team that like Tom Heaton's never fighting to get a position at the club on the pitch. He's there as more of a coach, someone that runs the goal, experience, runs the drills as well. And I think with Lamans, Lamans isn't the finished article, but he is considered first team player. And if Vitek comes in and is not accepting of being a backup option, then it's not really going to work, is it? So it's not going to be it's not going to be a good situation. But I think if we sell Vitek, we should get enough money to buy a backup option anyway. So I think it's one of these situations where how much would Vitek be worth? Maybe this is one of those deals where you sell him for whatever money you can get, but put in some significant add-ons or put in a sell-on clause as well. So buyback clause says Tony, yeah, if you're going to sell Vitek, you could put some clauses there, couldn't you? So if he does get sold for big money, and no, we need to have two good goalkeepers at the club. But the thing is, every person's got a different personality, and if Vitek doesn't want to be a backup goalkeeper, there's not a lot you do. You probably have to just move on. I do think that there's going to be a lot more football next season, so potentially we're saying this as well, aren't we? That the squad needs a lot more depth. And look at Man City. And Man City got maybe what Man United should have done is like you get Vitek and you get the player in first, then you buy another player. But I don't think Man United are looking to buy another goalkeeper that's going to compete with Lamens. We would be looking at a backup goalkeeper, but there might be some options out there. If Vitek, again, I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen, but if Vitek doesn't want to be backup, and it looks like that's the case, it looks like Man United are going to have to decide where he's going to go. Let's go back to midfield options. Fernandez is currently winning the poll. Is there any other players you feel that in terms of playing for West Ham, Spurs, that you would consider a good option for Man United? Or do you think Manchester United, that if we're looking at, does it just go to like Diouf and Fernandez? Is that the obvious, is that the obvious transfer? Because I don't think Spurs have actually got any players I'd want to sign. Is there any other players at West Ham you think would be good options apart from Fernandez and Diouf? I did see people talking about Somerville. I think Bowens probably feels like the most unrealistic at the moment. You would recall Hoyland as backup striker rather than sell him again. I think that ship might have sailed. That I think that there's they're very far on that. I don't think there's going to be a situation where he doesn't get sold. To be honest, so I think we're looking. I think he's going to get sold. I mean, it's 44 million euros. I think Man United are already kind of earmarking that money to invest in the squad. So I think he's going to get sold. But if you're looking at trying to buy players from West Ham, is there anybody else on the radar that we've maybe missed? And anyone you think why is Man United not looking at this player? I get the feeling we're looking at a lot of players, and maybe this is an opportunistic one. I don't think that West Ham players are going to be our top targets because we wouldn't have assumed that West Ham are going to get relegated. But I think there's definitely a case to maybe look at it and go, we could like potentially get a cheap deal. There are good deals out there. Jared Bowen says JDC. Yeah, Jared Bowen's he would be a decent option. The only thing I think that makes it difficult is Jared Bowen's quite expensive. He's also the age he's at. Also, he's under contract for quite a few years. I don't think we're going to see too much regarding movement from Jared Bowen. So at the moment, should we go into the to see what the poll result is? So I've got two names in the chat. So at the moment, Fernandez is winning on 62%. If you haven't voted in the poll, please vote in the poll if you want to have your voice heard. Also, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. We're trying to push towards 800 subscribers. We're getting quite close. We're about 5 or 6 away from that one. So if you're new to the channel, please get involved in the conversation. And we'll see. Well, so I did think that if we're looking at this, so I did think Fernandez would be the maybe favourite option. I'm kind of interested to see if people voted for, potentially like Diouf. I thought Diouf might divide opinions somewhat, and I did think if you're looking at other options, I didn't think there'd be a lot of interest in Van der Ven. He is, quite expensive. I think Spurs haven't had the best season, have they? And four players in would be nowhere near enough. Like I don't think if that happens, there's some issues. Like four players wouldn't be enough at all. JDC, you would take Fernandez over Belieber for the same money. I think he would cost the same money if they got relegated, for sure. Cheers, Tony. Appreciate that. We're going to be live for like probably another 10 minutes to discuss these stories, but I'm going to close the poll in about 5 minutes so we can talk about that. I would say outgoings are just as important, but this club seems to retain players and give new contracts. I would say that if you're looking at this, Man United have moved Rasmus out. They've moved Onana. They've Marcus Rashford, Anthony, Sancho. There's players being moved out. I think with Maguire, that Maguire's been given a new contract for a short-term contract just because of the injury issues for De Ligt, I believe, regarding that one. Luke Shaw, I think they're looking at replacements for Luke Shaw. There's left backs link. That's why we're talking about Dupe as a potential replacement. That's why we're talking about Kadioglu about a week ago. So there is potentially players out there to replace Luke Shaw that Man United are looking at. But I think it's seen as like not necessarily the main priority, but it's definitely something they're looking at as well. So I wouldn't worry too much about that one. I think outgoings are happening, but again, outgoings when you give out big contracts, it makes outgoings a bit more tricky. So it's something that's going to over the next year, 2 years, then most of the players should be going out. Say four players is nowhere near enough for you. You think seven is the minimum requirement, but we need half a new squad. Do we need half a new squad? Like, do you not think we've got some quality players in the squad? If you're looking at our team at the moment, I think you could probably say that we've got a good goalkeeper. We've got some good centre backs at the club. Okay, we probably do need to upgrade, but we do have Aiden Heaven, Yoro for the future. I think fullbacks is something that we're not really looking at. I think midfield is where we need the upgrades. But attacking wise, we scored way more goals this season. We haven't scored that many different to the top teams in the Premier League. I think Mbeumo, Cunha, Sesko have been like contributing quite well this season, and Bruno Fernandes as well been playing well. So I think we've got decent players in our squad. I think most people would acknowledge that our depth doesn't really have too. We don't have a lot of depth, though, do we? So yeah, we're proper owners. I think Man United would be in a very different situation, wouldn't we? We would be looking at a situation where we can sign top players, but we've got the money there. It's just about probably at the moment, if we finish 15th last season, we managed to attract some top quality players. If we're finishing third in the league, if we do the double over Liverpool and we finish third, I think people have a different opinion of Manchester United. And you have to look at it and say, no, this is actually pretty, it's quite impressive to go from 15th to third. And okay, maybe people will criticise the style of play, but the main thing is Man United are beating the top teams in the Premier League. Like we're beating Man City, we beat Arsenal, we beat Chelsea, and that we beat Aston Villa. So we've beaten all the teams around us. We beat Liverpool early on in the season. If we beat them again, then that'll be again a very good record against the top teams in the Premier League. And I think what we're looking at is we want to see consistency and see better improvements, better style of play. But you also have to look at it and say there's not lots of we haven't got many bench options either. So we have got one of the smaller squads of those teams I just listed. But if you were in charge, you'd have got rid of if you owned Man United, you'd have got rid of Maguire and Mainu. If you got rid of Mainu, who would you be looking to replace him with? Because that would be another like Mainu's been like statistically one of the better midfielders in the Premier League since January. Go says we better be looking at fullback position. I say people compare Mainu to Seedorf. Mainu's only 20 though. 20, oh, he's just turned 21. And I think when you're comparing those players, Cake, that no one's talking about comparing Mainu to like how good was Cantona when he's 21, Paul Ince when he's 21, Roy Keane when he's 21. I think that he's quite young. So I think with Mainu, it's like if you have a player that's 20, 21, you have to be patient. Like to compare Mainu to these players that have already had their careers, I don't think it's going to be. I would say, based on like comparing him with Agate, if Agate could pass and dictate play, Mainu's not starting, but Agate can't pass and dictate play. Mainu can. So I I think if you're looking at Mainu, what Mainu's contributed, like since Mainu's been in the first 11, Man United have picked up more points than anybody. So yeah, Mainu stays. I don't think he's done anything wrong. I don't know why you don't like him, but that's just your opinion. But I think with Mainu, it's about potential, isn't it? Daz says we need a better bench. The starting we need a better bench when the starting 11 is sorted. I think so. If you're looking at the transfer window, then it feels like you need to get in at least like two or three midfield players sorts out the first 11. Maybe a left back, centre back would sort out defence possibly, and then some sort of attacking player, either left wing or striker, would kind of fix your at least have some rotation. And I think what you could see then is naturally some of the players in the first team then drop to the bench. So if we bought if we had a top quality centre back and Maguire was on the bench, and if we had say a new left back and Luke Shaw's on the bench, suddenly your bench kind of fixes itself. When you start buying the first team players and your old first team players start dropping to the bench, I think suddenly you start getting a lot more in there. So I think that's the point that Man United you don't buy players for the bench, you buy players for the first team, and then the first team players that were there last season gradually get relegated to the bench. It's like Lindelof was a first team player last season. He was at Manchester United. He was on the bench, wasn't he? So it does take a bit of time to do this. But if United look at a serious, this is the one time where that we are going to be fixing midfield, but we're fixing midfield from a situation where our midfield players are leaving. We're not buying a player in and then putting Casemiro on the bench, or buying in another player and putting Agati on the bench. We're just replacing those players. So we've kind of left it so late that the midfield players are leaving, and that's why. So we've got Koimenu, and there's literally no other options around there. People listen to you, Cake, but you can't expect people to agree with you. Like people have different. Say Scholes had senior pros. Say Kobe had Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro, so he did have senior pros there as well. So he had Casemiro to play alongside, had Bruno Fernandes play behind, Harry Maguire behind him. So the senior pros there, but the issue is going to be that the Casemiro is going to be sold. So you have to look at who do Man United replace Casemiro with. And if we're looking at Fernandes, Fernandes is quality, but Fernandes is also only about 21 as well. So if you're looking at Fernandes coming in, he's not going to be able to do what Casemiro does to start with. He is a good player, but again, he's going to have ups and downs, and he's still learning his trade as well. So it is going to be definitely one. Fernandez is still one for the future. Like he is still he's good now, but he's still going to be inconsistent and not going to have the leadership qualities that you have from Casemiro. I think that's why too many feels like the best option because he does have that skill set and does have the experience. But if too many doesn't even want to leave Real Madrid, where do you go? Like Fernandez is a good player. He's definitely priced to sell if West Ham get relegated, but there's not options out there that makes you think there isn't one midfielder out there where I think get this midfield player he's the best possible option in that position. The only ones I can look at is go right. I think like João Gomez is a really cheap deal, really decent, really good use of money. I think Hayden Hackney is a good use of like 30 million. I think Fernandez, if West Ham get relegated, is a no-brainer. Alex Scott is like I'm 50-50. I think Alex Scott's good, but you're not going to get a cheap deal with Alex Scott from Bournemouth. You're going to have to spend a little bit of money. Yeah, no, I get the panic from people, but I just think that you just need to be. No, it's only May. There isn't any panic yet, but Mainu was dropped because he didn't train properly. There's no evidence of that. There's the cake. There's no evidence that he didn't train properly. So I don't know why you think that. But if there's an article that says this is categorically true, then send it to me. But he didn't feature. Mainly didn't play because Amrin didn't like him. I'd say that's the point for you, Daz. So the players dropping to the bench are not good enough. No, but I think this bit it's probably like a gradual process, isn't it? That if you're looking at the first team players, like if Luke Shaw's on the bench, like I think Luke Shaw, you'd say over the season, he's had more good games than bad games, and Man United have been an effective team according to like stats. If you take your thoughts out of it, Man United have only conceded 7 goals by mistakes, and that's the best in the league. So these players are not making mistakes, but we do criticise them sometimes for maybe not being clinical enough or maybe not being attacking enough for fullbacks. I say you like Gomez, Edison, and Fernandez would be great buys. They're actually all about the same price, aren't they? So if Fernandez gets relegated, he's 35. Edison is supposed to be roughly that sort of price. But you go for Lewis Hall. Diamonde would be massive money though. Diamonde would be like 85 million plus. I know a couple of people that watched some of Diamonde recently. They say he's fantastic, but it's going to be tricky, isn't it? It's going to be difficult to try and get him in as well. So really, really tricky with that one. If you're watching, only 5 more subscribers to get to 800. I was hoping to try and hit that target before we beat Liverpool on the weekend, but or today, but that might be quite tricky. Don't we all see our defensive line as being held together by spit and a prayer? I don't know. I think we're unlucky with injuries. If everybody's available and everybody's fit, I think there's actually quite good options there. Like I think Yoro, Maguire, Aiden Heaven, Delit, Lissandro Martinez. The only caveat is injury issues. Like I don't know what the situation with Delit is. If Manchester United's medical team look at him and go, right, okay, they don't see this being a problem in the future. It feels risky though, doesn't it? Our defensive line feels a little bit like, we did miss players. Don't forget, we missed Maguire and Lissandro Martinez because Lissandro Martinez got that red card for the hair issue, and Maguire got a red in the Bournemouth game. So, and also, did he get that extended? But for swearing. So anyway, we missed a few defensive options for stupid reasons. It wasn't just injuries recently. So there is a few other reasons, but no, it was a bit stupid, wasn't it? Um, I don't know. So I wouldn't let one person wearing a t-shirt at once outweigh kind of like good performances on the pitch. So I don't know. I think with the Manu situation, I think for me there's unnecessary there's unnecessary toxicity towards Manu because of Ruben Amorim. Ruben Amorim said a lot of things which weren't true. He said we need to suffer, which isn't true. He said the squad was terrible, which isn't true. We're third in the league. So I would say if I had to have a if I looked at Manu and looked at Amorim and said who do I want in my club, it wouldn't be Amorim. I think he was all ego, had these crazy ideas. The football wasn't exactly successful. I think Man United bought in better players, and I don't think he had a clear long term vision. And I think he's a bit out of his depth that he kept losing it, threatening to quit. I think Amrin couldn't handle the pressure, and I think Kobe Manu can handle the pressure. But if Kobe Manu hadn't been training properly, how could he walk into a matchday squad, play 90 minutes, cover the most distance on the pitch versus Arsenal and Man City, and Man United win both those games? So it's just can't be true, can it? Big Dog said Amrin didn't fail. The board failed him. Well, I suppose that the board shouldn't have appointed Amrin because clearly what Amrin wanted to do, and the players he wanted weren't going to be coming his way, were they? Andy said Sancho was great in Germany. I would love someone who can cross the ball, but it seems to be a dying art. I know. I suppose if you're looking at the situation, say with Sancho, what went wrong with Sancho? Like what went wrong with Sancho? That he was a great player in Dortmund, wasn't he? And then suddenly he hit the wall. I don't know whether it's just that the Premier League is too difficult for Sancho, but this is kind of like one of the reasons why sometimes, if you look at the stats people can put up in the Bundesliga, they're not really going to translate to the Premier League. Like they're not really going to translate to that one. So Randy says I like Luke Shaw, but don't trust him. No international tournaments next season. I think that's why with Luke Shaw, Randy, you get the backup player in for Luke Shaw because Luke Shaw at some point needs to be replaced anyway. So whether Luke Shaw gets replaced next season or the season after, you kind of need to make sure you got some left back cover. I think this idea of actually having like Dallo on the left or Masraoui on the left or putting Dorgu on the left, you need to buy a left back, really, don't you? You need to get a left back at the club. And if, for example, like if Harry Masser's not ready, then you have to buy somebody. It's as simple as that. You can't be looking at hopefully getting cover and hoping it works out. So I think Man United need to be serious. If they're a serious club and they want to make sure they've got, we can't have a situation going into any game next season where we don't have enough centre backs or we don't have a left back or if we don't have a striker available. Like we can't have a squad that's so thin that we effectively don't have enough people to cover the positions or play in the correct position. So I think that's a bit crazy. So I did say I would look at the poll. So because you Genghis, so if you want to vote, you've got probably like 10 seconds. So I'll probably okay. Let's close the poll. So in terms of like the best option from relegated teams, and Old Man says Amrin brought structure and life back into United. There seemed to be definitely a bit of a watershed moment where there was definitely players being forced out of the club. I think part of this is going to be Amrin, but also the people above Amrin backed him and got rid of Rashford. They got rid of um, Anthony. They got rid of Sancho. So, but too much pride. If he'd played 4-2-3-1 for the whole season, then he would have had the job. And so might have played. Maybe he would have done better than Carrick if he'd have been a bit more, I know, flexible. But he didn't even win two games in a row, and he didn't have any flexibility. And it wasn't like Ruben Amorim was there for like 4 or 5 games. He was there for 14 months and couldn't win back-to-back games. I think sometimes football is about getting the best out of what squads you got, not necessarily if you got some. If you look at Areola, he gets the best out of his team, and if you look at say Glasner, he plays different formations depending on his squad. The Premier League is too difficult to just be one-dimensional. So yeah, if he'd have played 4-2-3-1, maybe he could have done it better than Carrick. It's possible, but uh, the results suggest that he just wasn't going to get anywhere. United Dice says on the Amarin topic, the board failed, but he expected too much too quickly. Yeah, it's going to take a bit of time, isn't it? I don't know what Ruben Amorim. The thing, none of us are going to know what was Ruben Amorim told when he joined Manchester United, and that way it's difficult to. If he was given assurances and they weren't met, you can see him being frustrated. But no one knows exactly this one as well. But to go back to the topic of potential options to buy from relegated teams, I'll just go quickly into the vote. So thanks everybody for voting on this one. And saying best relegation signing. So in reverse order, other who are it's probably non-specified, but that actually maybe that's João Gomez. Maybe I should have put João Gomez on that as well. But Diouf is 11%. Did divide opinion a little bit. Van der Ven is quite high considering I was like quite negative about Van der Ven for the price, the salary, and also I don't really rate Van der Ven, so I was bit I'm a bit against Van der Ven. I think he's very, very expensive, and I think we might regret spending that amount of money. I think there's better options that are cheaper. And Fernandez won it by miles. To be honest, I was expecting this. So 65% say Fernandez is the best signing. And if he gets relegated, I think he's the best signing because his price just goes so low. Like 34 million for Fernandez. I'm pretty sure West Ham spent about 45 million on him a year ago. So this would be an actual loss on Fernandez. And because Fernandez is an incredible player, I think it would be a disaster for West Ham, but it would be someone's going to benefit from it. And if Spurs can get something out of the game as well, I'm João Other Gomez is definitely yeah. When I was doing it, I was just thinking that people have mentioned. There's a few people. People have mentioned Bowen. People have mentioned Somerville. I think people have mentioned Gray, and there's been like three or four players. And I think Gomez is the obvious one, isn't he? But no, I tried to avoid talking about Amram because everyone's going to have a different view regarding this one. Yeah, I can't really speak on what the board said because I don't think anyone knows what the board said to Amrin. But no, I think Amrin was brought in. Like the idea of Ruben Amrin was that he was going to play a certain system, and then we'd buy players for that system. I'm just wondering whether, for a reason, like Amrin started calling out people above him, and maybe that led to a sacking. He might have got more time if he'd have been a bit more adaptable and maybe a bit more patient. And I think Man United wanted to give him time, but again, if they were never going to buy the players that he wanted or the players that suited his system, it was a stupid appointment, and they shouldn't have done that. But no, I think with this one also as well is whatever works in the Portuguese league, the Premier League is a completely different league, so there was no guarantee it was going to work either. I think it was quite risky to back a manager that's going to play a bit of an unconventional system, which doesn't really yield too many successful results in the Premier League. So I don't know. I think United maybe made a mistake with hiring Ruben Amorim because if they were going to hire Ruben Amorim, you kind of got to go all in and like buy the players that would suit what he needs to do. If you don't do that, it's yeah, it's no point. He did get rid of the problem players, and maybe fitness levels improved. So I'm not going to say that it was all bad. That this season, no, we did finish 15th last season. We were in like fifth when Ruben Amorim got sacked. So things were changing. Like we were getting better. Yeah, a good option actually. Well, a good one as well said Matis Mane from Wolves, I could see Ineos being a fan of him with his age. He could be a target. He could be about a £30 million signing. That's a player that's been linked to Manchester United a little bit as well. If you think about this, it's almost exactly the same situation as Delap last season. £30 million, young striker, relegated team. I think he might be a better option than Delap, and potentially for me, that's not a bad option. Like I see Creepy linked and I see Mane linked as like potential backup strikers. I quite like both those options. I think there's some good options there as well, and it's not a lot of money. So £30 million. If you think Rasmus is going to go for 44 million euros, I think they could take that money and invest it in a Mane. That would not be a bad option. If you're looking at if you're looking at the other options, then I think Krupi might cost more. Like I think he might be more expensive from Bournemouth, but they're both good options. I think they're both good players we could try and get to. Morning to yourself, Kevin. Welcome to the chat. I normally do about an hour in this morning, so what I'll do is I'll take some comments, and if people are engaged and we can have a conversation, we'll carry on for a little bit longer. But big up to people in the chat. If you are new, please subscribe. We're trying to get to 800 subscribers before we play Liverpool, so it's going to be tough. We will be live about an hour before the game, but if you're new now and want to subscribe, help us hit that target. That would be really appreciated. Is there anyone from Spurs or West Ham you would steal if they go down? If yeah, I've been asking the question this stream, but oh man, what do you think? I would definitely getting Fernandez because he's got a 34 million release clause if they go down, or that's how much his price is going to be. I would 100% get Fernandez. I'd be looking at Juve. I'm not. I'm not 100% on him, but I think he's a good option potentially. I think you'd have to look at him a bit more. Haven't watched West Ham enough to say whether I think he's definitely going to be an upgrade. So, worth the best option out there. I think Kadioglu is a good shout as well for left backs. I think if you're looking at Spurs, I don't think there's anyone at Spurs I really want to spend money on. They seem to have a combination of underperforming players on big contracts, expensive players. Spurs get relegated. I think they got an issue because I don't think they can sell the players for the sort of prices they're talking about. I don't think those players are good enough. So I would be dodging Spurs whenever I've watched Spurs this season. They have been poor. I'm trying to think of any players I would buy. Probably not. I think there's better options in different teams. To be honest, I think if Nottingham Forest had got relegated, I'd probably have a list of Nottingham Forest players. There's definitely a few players that I think are going to be very good options. Yeah, no worries at all. So under Carrick, Sesko scores more than Amrin. I think it's different. Like it's different. Amrin had different reasons for signing different players as well. Genghis says hyping young players too much is madness, and so I hope we see Ballon get some game time today. No, exactly. I think Man United fans sometimes I think the Ballon thing is a bit like a bit of a joke. Sometimes, as in just meant as good humour. That I think with Ballon I think he scored like a outrageous shot though, didn't he, against Arsenal? And it was like a he was a fun player to watch. Had good attacking output. They scored the winner again. Scored a crucial goal against Arsenal. Scored the other goal against City, and you think, yeah, he couldn't have done any more, could he, in those two games before he then got the injury? I'm hoping we see Ballon back quite soon, though. I'm thinking he might get some time off the bench today. He was on the bench for the Brentford game. I think he will be featuring as well. I think Cunha. I'll be surprised if Cunha's not in the starting lineup. Apparently, Benjamin Sesko might not be available today. If that's true, or maybe he drops to the bench, maybe he can't start. I think Cunha probably has to start, and I think we might be seeing Cunha and Buemo and Almajalo based on like expectations that potentially Sesko's not available. There is like rumor that maybe also Luke Shaw's not available. If that's the case, I'm wondering whether we see Masraoui switch to that side or whether we see Dallo switch to that side. I think there's options there. Liverpool are actually missing a lot of attacking players, so I don't think it's a big issue. I do like Kadioglu. I think he's a good option. If he's going to be like, if he's going to be like 40 million, I think it's a good option. He can play left or right back as well. I think it would be a great option to have in the squad. I don't know. Of all the issues we've got, Cake, I think Mainoo's not the biggest issue. Like, I think that there's just like Mainoo's playing for Man United. The team's playing quite well. I don't know what the if you don't like Mainoo, that's but Mainoo hasn't really done anything wrong with the pitch, has he? He's been playing well. No, Luke Shaw started every single game this season, and he's somewhat of a surprising one. No, West Ham have got a difficult run, and if you're a West Ham fan, it's not looking good. Isn't Harry Kane getting the Ballon d'Or? If Bayern Munich win everything, I think he will. I think Harry Kane is a bit of an underrated player, I would say. But we'll do like 5 minutes of final comments before I head off. So when Dorgu got injured, the team's energy and balance dropped significantly. He was just like such a good player to watch, isn't he? I think he adds a bit of energy. Even when he first came in, I think he adds a bit of energy in our team. It's just like when he gets on the ball, he's quite exciting, isn't he? Quite direct. He's a physical runner. But I think when he started scoring goals, people were like, "Wow, okay." His finishing was actually pretty impressive. So I think once you got that at that age, it feels like you got something to work with. So I think Dorgu for me is quite an exciting player. So Bruno gets the record today. So he needs one assist, doesn't he, to equal the record, two to beat it. So I think that's probably about where he is. So yeah, hopefully today. It's going to be a tough game. I'd say Liverpool are missing quite a few players attacking wise, but it's going to be a difficult game based on the history. I don't think I've ever had a game where the only game I've seen where Man United have beaten Liverpool easily was where there was a red card in the first minute. It might have been a hit like Hippo Honcho era about 2002 or three. But that's the only time I've seen Man United beat Liverpool quite comfortably. Actually, maybe when we beat them 3-1 with David James. in probably 96 or 7 was like another one. Might be 97, 98 actually. But no, it's not going to be an easy game. But at Old Trafford, the crowd's going to be up for it. It's effectively like a Champions League celebration thing for us, isn't it? If we get back into the Champions League, if we can beat Liverpool twice, it would be a significant step, I think, in terms of like people changing their opinions. Maybe with Michael Carrick as well, that he's definitely got a lot to play for the next few games. It's effectively Michael Carrick now trying to prove he can do enough to like convince people that he's going to be the best option for next season. It's going to be tricky. So Liverpool playing rubbish. So, are you a Liverpool fan, Clive? I think it's going to. Okay, if Liverpool play rubbish, Man United will win. But I'm not expecting. I'm just expecting that it's going to be a tough game. I'm just thinking like when we see Man United against Leeds, Leeds are always up for it. I'd be very surprised if Liverpool aren't up for it. If they're not up for it, then I would say that for me that maybe that's like slot gone because you've got to be up for this sort of game. So if Liverpool don't play well and aren't up for it and don't have the fight and Man United put them away, I think that could be like one of the final nails in Slot's coffin because you've got to be up for your rivals. Look, if Man United aren't up for it today, there would be massive question marks put towards Michael Carrick. Who's the incompetent ref and VR? Yeah, I'm hoping there's like no drama for that because that would be. Yeah, Alex says Kadioglu doesn't offer anything Shaw offers. I'd like to see somebody sticking up for Luke Shaw. Win today, Carrick gets the job, says Andy. If Man United win today, I think it's going to be very difficult to, on the back end, if Michael Carrick leads Man United to beat Liverpool, Arsenal, and City, then I know people are questioning, what can he do in Europe, etc. But I don't know. I don't know. It'd be surprising if we didn't get the job if we beat Liverpool. If we beat Liverpool comfortably and we're Champions League is secure, I would not be surprised if Man United make a. No, I would not be surprised if we see loads of streams talking about Carrick's got to get the job. It would be difficult to make an argument against it, wouldn't it? If we play, and again, if the performance is good as well, it would be a massive boost for him. So Genghis is saying Manu was like a victim of the system, didn't suit two-man midfield. Casemiro and Bruno picked ahead of him, so it's a football decision from Amarin and not a personal vendetta to ruin him. So thanks for finding the middle ground, Genghis. I think clearly when Man United were playing with Ruben Amarin, the idea was going to be that they get someone like Belieber in and go for people that are more mobile. It wasn't great having Bruno Fernandes further back, and I can see why people have quite strong views about that one. Mr. Deadpool says if United beat Liverpool, it'd be the first time a manager has beaten the top six sides in a season. Is it first time? Is this the first time for like a Man United manager? Because surely like Man City must have done this. Alex Ferguson must have done this. Stephanie says it will be a close game today. Liverpool still have decent players, and we dare not lose. They go above us if that happens. Yeah, it could be. It could be like a tough one, couldn't it? So you're happy if Carrick gets the deal. He can show what he's made of. If Michael Carrick gets the contract and gets the extension, then I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be okay. It's going to be a step up having the Champions League football, but I think I'm actually looking forward to Champions League football. Whether it's Michael Carrick, Areola, Nagelsmann, I think there's still a lot of positives. If we finish third, we beat Liverpool, and we look at getting some decent transfers in. I think Man United fans can be quite optimistic. There's lots to be positive about as well. But no, I think it's going to be time to wrap up, guys. There will be a live stream about 1 hour before kickoff. Myself and We Deserve Better will be hosting that. Helgi will be doing a watch along, and we will be also doing a post match stream. There will be a calling show tonight for people to come on, have their say on anything Man United related. I'm guessing it might be related to Man United, Liverpool, Carrick, potentially transfer stuff, but we'll be running that probably 8 p.m. tonight. So there's a few streams to look out for. But again, thanks for tuning in for the morning one. This is kind of the early news one where we're kind of talking a little bit about this one. But say, yeah, I'm more optimistic at the moment. saying JDC saying that Carrick PR team's on steroids. Man United are third in the league though, so I think if you look at results, results are better, and I think that's what football's about. It's about getting results. And if Michael Carrick keeps getting results, he's probably going to be the big favourite to be in charge next season. If he doesn't get results, then things will turn against him. But no, wherever Areola goes, it'll be interesting to see how he gets on. If he joins Manchester United, I wish him the best as well. I just think at the moment, if Michael Carrick did go on a winning run now, and we finished like third by a distance, it's difficult to make a case not to give him an extension. Like he hasn't done anything wrong. But then, guys, we'll be back live this afternoon. Probably be, I guess, like 2:30 ish. An hour before the match. We'll be discussing the lineups. There is expected to be potentially some people missing. There is for both sides, so hopefully we're going to be still with a good lineup. Luke Shaw's a doubt, Seska's a doubt, but they could both still be starting. We don't know. But then, guys, thanks for watching. If you're new, please subscribe and share the stream with people as well if you can. And we'll be back live later on today. So see you guys in the next one.